Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Welcome to this DCTV series about the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is pre-recorded and shows how humankind and the community of nations are confronting the banking cartel and how the banking cartel is now subject to the will of humankind. Thanks to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, studio producer, Maurice Jackson, audio and prompter. A lot has been going on, mostly on the internet, in the last few days leading up to this episode. This segment and the teleprompter that is published before the show is going to explain the most important developments. Just like we have been doing for nearly 2 years, the video of this show will be uploaded on the internet and you will be asked to comment. At the end of this teleprompter are documents showing that the government of the United States is not legitimate. That is, it is not operating under its Constitution of 1789. We will also talk about how all of humanity is winding down the banking cartel under receivership in the global debt facility. Another name for the banking cartel is the Network of Global Corporate Control. This is the name that 3 mathematicians at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland, gave their paper in 2011 showing the existence of the banking cartel. These mathematicians are Stefania Vitali, James Glatfelter, and Stefano Battiston. The International Bank for Reconstruction and Development was created in 1944 to administer the international monetary gold reserves of the nations, as well as other precious metals, gemstones, artwork, and treasure set aside after World War II in a trust called the Global Debt Facility, TVM LSM 666. After the National Advisory Council on International Monetary and Financial Policies, that is the U.S. government agencies set up to regulate the World Bank, which includes the Fed, the Commerce Department, Treasury, and State, they declined to bring the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development into compliance on the capital markets. On February 14, 2011, I notified the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF of this fact. On January 19, 2012, the Board of Governors attempted to bring the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development into compliance. That means it's following the laws on the securities markets by settling my suit in the U.S. Court of Appeals and reinstating me as acting general counsel of the IBRD. The Judicial Conference of the United States, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and the sureties who bond the oaths of the federal judiciary simply stonewalled 188 ministers of finance and development on the Board of Governors. A conglomerate on the capital markets that thinks it's above the law has been causing this corruption. The Secretaries of State of 11 states have recorded the liens against the Federal Reserve and the other agents of the Network of Global Corporate Control, which are in receivership in the Global Debt Facility. On December 18, 2015, the Development Committee of the World Bank and IMF fired the President of the World Bank, Dr. Jim Kim, and the Vice President of Human Resources, Sean McGrath. I registered my unlimited power of attorney for Allied Security Holdings, LLC, also known as Allied Barton, on behalf of the Global Debt Facility with the Securities and Exchange Commission. But the Network of Global Corporate Control has dishonored its obligation to permit the global currency reset that was announced by the Board of Governors to proceed. Instead, the Network of Global Corporate Control has caused PressWire to remove the press release from the internet. The press release was cleared by the Board of Governors of the World Bank before it was released and remained on the internet before the network of global corporate control caused Presswire to remove the announcement of the global currency reset illegally. This was documented. During the global currency reset, unconstitutional Federal Reserve notes will be replaced for U.S. dollars held by the Global Debt Facility, pending the minting of aurum. That's currency out of gold. The U.S. Congress suspended the Constitution of 1789, secretly extending a state of emergency since 1861, using war powers against the people of the United States to steal their property. The U.S. Congress refused to convene a convention in violation of Article 5 of the Constitution after more than two-thirds of the state legislatures submitted applications for amendment. The full extent of the interregnum is now squarely before the people. The United States of America will not be unilaterally torn asunder through a premeditated destruction in value of the Federal Reserve note. And a man named Tom Keith said to me, "Karen, you're right about people finally awakening, but it's so slow. It's like they're in a deep freeze. Keep going, I'm with you." And then I responded to Tom Keith. I said, "You're right. People are in a deep freeze. That deep freeze is caused by military technology that's broadcast to keep people from being able to think clearly. Some people are more susceptible to this technology, which is called scalar waves and EMF frequencies, than others. These waves are similar to gravity. Luckily, since you know this interference is there, you can exercise your own free will to escape. Enough of us have worked ourselves loose, and we're helping the others to get independent from it. The first thing you need to do to free yourself is to form a group of 3 or 4 neighbors or family and meet regularly to help each other. If your first reaction is to dismiss this bad news out of hand, that is a clear sign that you're one of the individuals who's become trapped. We've already shown you enough proof of the existence of this technology in previous episodes to demonstrate that this is not only possible, but it's quite probable. But I will repeat this short clip today because this is central information. The first proof is this video of Poland's Minister of National Defense.
Minister obrony mówił o zagrożeniach innych niż te unijne.
Czy państwo polskie posiada strategię wobec nielegalnych badań, to znaczy testowania broni elektromagnetycznej na polskich obywatelach?
Teraz takie analizy robimy, żeby zidentyfikować, gdzie są ludzie, którzy skarżą się na tego typu dolegliwości i tego typu sytuacje. Myślę, że za jakieś pół roku będę mógł pani odpowiedzieć coś więcej, ale powtarzam, z tych ułamkowych informacji, które do mnie dotarły, Dolny Śląsk, okolice Legnicy i ziemia zachodniopomorska to są główne obszary, gdzie takie skargi, nasilenie tych skarg jest największe.
Minister obrony nie sprecyzował, jaka komisja albo zespół przygotują raport na temat eksperymentów na Polakach z użyciem broni elektromagnetycznej. Jakub Sobieniowski, Faktem.
The second proof is the study about the network of global corporate control. The hub of this network contains the world's central banks. I've posted in the teleprompter a segment that provides good background information about how important it is that the corruption and state capture in the United States should end. Last week, I documented and uploaded on this series' archives on the internet the document showing that I represent the people of the United States during the global currency reset. Let me read you from my open letter to humanity that I posted on my social media on January 31, 2017. I heard back that the picture of the monarch butterfly, which I tweeted at the time, was not such a brilliant move on my part because the banking cartel uses this symbol for mind control. I did have a funny feeling when I chose that picture, and I can tell you all that although I have strong intuition, it's not infallible, and so I sometimes choose to overrule my intuition. This time it was a mistake to ignore my intuition. So Liesje, that's a person who I've been getting emails from Holland, suggested that I use another symbol, which I showed you. It comes from Ghana. As a coincidence, Betsy Banfield Malone showed you the Adingra in her blog around the same time that I was looking for it, and I see that on the screen in front of you. We are all working and learning together. The Adingra is a geometric object that encodes mathematical relationships between supersymmetric particles. The Adingras are named after symbols that represent wise sayings in West African culture. This Adingra is called Nea Onim no Sua A Ohu. I'm sure I've mispronounced that. It translates as, he who does not know can become knowledgeable through learning. The coalition for the rule of law that's in charge is now consolidating. We're having a conversation. From a person on Facebook, she said, "You do not know everything." This person was mad at me because she gave me some disinformation, and I responded by saying that I didn't want to continue to deal with her. I acknowledge that I do not know everything. It's going to take everyone working together for a long time before we learn what we need to know. In the meantime, we certainly know enough to exchange paper currencies and stop the flow of funding to the banking cartel. That's our first priority. Think of a butterfly that emerges from its cocoon that has to wait for its wings to strengthen before flying. That is where the coalition for the rule of law is in the global currency reset. I'm waiting for the people following me to learn where we are and to confirm this back to me. The counters on the internet are unreliable. Still, I can see that a lot of people read my tweets, and they confirm that martial law in the United States is over, and the capture of the courts it's also over, all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, which has been captured by the banking cartel. The banking cartel broke a critical link in a tweet which confirmed the existence of martial law, and this link contained Sandra Day O'Connor's admission that the Supreme Court was not openly admitting the martial law, but it was explaining it away. You may have to type in the link yourself. When the banking cartel broke the link, I just retweeted it. The banking cartel broke a link showing that the armed services of the United States remain loyal to the U.S. Constitution of 1789 and not to the rogue banking cartel and its agents. And one of their agents is General Dunford. And the banking cartel broke that link twice. A double broken link that shows that the banking cartel is really, it's powerless. During this interregnum in the legitimate government of the United States, other impostors are masquerading as if the Constitution of 1789 was in force, while it is not. The Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Bob Work, and Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Paul Silva, these are all traitors. These men will go down in history as enemies of all of humanity. And if any of these scoundrels think that what I'm saying is untrue, they're welcome to try and refute it. During the global currency reset, there's going to be a lot of noise and blowback from the banking cartel. This corruption is going to diminish with time. It doesn't mean that the banking cartel is in charge. The banking cartel is broken and insolvent, and the process of winding down the banking cartel is irrevocable. This is because enough of us know about the banking cartel, and it's no longer hidden. we have reached enough critical mass and we have pivoted on the turning point. How do I know this, and how can I convince you of this? It's because I'm still getting through, and we're building momentum by word of mouth. The search engines no longer mention me. This is a good thing. It shows you that the banking cartel exists and is trying to influence you. It also shows you, in case you need more proof, that I am not working with the banking cartel. I'm working entirely with and for humanity, and everything I accomplish is due to that and that alone. In the beginning of this segment, I showed you a clip from Poland about advanced military weaponry that's jamming your thought processes. The way to overcome this technology is to be aware of it and to gather a group of friends who can help each other to figure out how each member of the group is being affected. It's useful to try and categorize which people are especially susceptible to scalar wave and EMF programming. One surefire way to find this out is to casually mention the existence of mind control technology. Those people who seem to be allergic to the topic are the ones who are most susceptible. Drop the subject with them because they are enslaved by mind control. There's no way to have a constructive discussion with them. The only way to get through to these people is the rising tide principle. A rising tide raises all boats. There are 6 documents which establish that we're in the global currency reset. These documents were created some time ago, but provided the platform for the reset. I'll summarize these documents briefly in case you don't want to read them for yourself by looking at the links in the teleprompter. About the world's legal system and common law. When I filed the financial statements of the global debt facility with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and the rest of the National Advisory Council, and also questions from West Virginia about Orem, and also my authority as overseer mandate trustee of the global debt facility, and also documents showing how the U.S. military is backing the global debt facility, and this includes the military oath of office and statement. In one of the emails that I got, I am stunned by the depth of the corruption. The banking cartel broke the link to that email twice. The U.S. monetary gold reserves are being deployed in the global currency reset so that the U.S. does not surrender unilaterally, and so that the banking cartel cannot steal all of our pensions. And also an email which I received on the 3rd of October in 2015, quote, I've been helping medias for the past 3 years, Press TV, RT, and several others, and I've been on the front line and have seen things that people never thought existed. We have 70% of the U.S. military on our side. The banking cartel likes to send people to me who are converted whistleblowers. These are whistleblowers who've become frightened and who try and steal the world's gold in some way, or ask me to forward messages to you that will confuse things in one way or another. It's especially important to work carefully in view of the very potent military mind control capabilities. I've been trying to preserve the world's wealth for humanity and clean up corruption at the World Bank for a long time, and I never send important communications until I've slept on the issues. I find it easier to deal with things after I've processed them in my sleep. There's no question about it. We're going to have to become familiar with the scalar and EMF, that's electromagnetic field, military capabilities, and learn how to function despite them. Actually, once you know these exist, it's fun to figure out how the banking cartel is trying to influence you and then to do exactly the opposite thing. That's why I interacted directly with the Indian and Russian embassies, because I was addressing letters to them and I made silly mistakes. That was due to the EMF interference. And I'd like to, is it time for the outro? It looks like that's what I'm supposed to do. I'd like to thank you for listening to another segment of the net.
No, it's not time for the outro.
Oh, it's not. Okay. We don't have a floor director tonight. But I'll keep going through the teleprompter. All the people of the world are taking control over their incompetent, illegal, and illegitimate governments. We're not doing this by violent methods. These government employees have all been caught out in a huge hoax, and they're going to be judged on how smart they are in figuring out that they now work for all of humanity. We're going to slowly, carefully take back control and do things right. On the 4th of November 2016, I told the Joint Staff of the U.S. military that, quote, the writing is on the wall, close quote. This was to let General Joseph Dunford Jr. know that the people in the United States did not consent to secret martial law. Supreme Court Justice Anton Scalia was murdered because Scalia was about to spill the beans about the corrupt legal profession that was hiding the fact that the U.S. Constitution of 1789 was not in effect. Just before this segment was taped, I tweeted a legal opinion that Justice Scalia wrote about the common law. This is the only law that's currently in effect since the courts and statutes have been corrupted by the network of global corporate control. It's going to take us a long time to clean up this corruption, especially now that we know that the legal profession has been captured entirely by the network of global corporate control. As for Donald Trump, he's now our caretaker, and we're demanding that he stop provoking our allies with threats of trade wars. Note how Germany reacted to the banking cartel's announcement in Trump's bogus inauguration speech. Dividing the U.S. from Germany is what the power transition model from the War College predicts will bring on World War III. And this is a message to Germany. Donald Trump is illegitimate, and what he says does not count. It's fake. The U.S. military does not stand behind Donald Trump, who is not the legitimate president of the United States. Instead, the U.S. military is backed by the same monetary gold reserves that J.F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan were accessing in the global debt facility. That is in my letter to the German and Japanese defense attachés. This is also to the black people in the United States. Ignore what Donald Trump is saying. It's fake. Donald Trump's provocation and attempts to incite World War III and racial violence are in front of us, and we reject them. The DCTV program on Belshazzar was directed to Donald Trump and to all of the other elites. I suggest that all government employees heed what happened to Belshazzar. On November 4th, 2016, I told the Joint Staff of the U.S. military that the writing is on the wall. Donald Trump already had his chance to do right by admitting that the U.S. Constitution of 1789 is not in force and effect. Mr. Trump is now in default under the commercial lien held by the global debt facility. I'm also having a conversation with some people in the Netherlands. They're asking me how we can drop prosecuting some of the child traffickers. I've put in the teleprompter the links for some videos that a Dutch and a Norwegian follower sent me. How are we going to stop child trafficking if we do not punish the pedophiles? Right now, the police force is directed by and reports to the banking cartel. When the banking cartel is liquidated because it's insolvent and it's funding from our tax revenues, which is raised to pay interest on that scam called country debt, when that source of funding dries up and people regain control over their governments, child trafficking will stop. if we try and take control from the top without wringing out the corruption at grassroots levels, we will fail. The enabling environment for crime did not come about suddenly, and it cannot end suddenly. For those victims whose lives were wrecked, or worse yet, snuffed out, bear with us as we mourn your loss with you, shed tears for your suffering, and carefully work together to prevent future crimes from coming to pass. For anyone who thinks we can have a global currency reset with the amount of corruption in the system without allowing the perpetrators to slink off now, knowing that we heartily condemn what they've done, your time to weigh in is now. So I'm telling you how we're going to work together in the global currency reset. This is the global currency reset. Humanity is united. We're in a new reality, one in which humanity has control over our own wealth and will use it to care for one another and to clean up our world. The global currency reset is not going to be implemented overnight. There needs to be a critical mass so that we can all implement together. You need to reach out and teach people where we are. This can take some time, but don't get impatient or tired out or think that nothing's going on. This process of taking back our world and our wealth is irreversible and inevitable. We know this from the power transition model from the U.S. National War College. The Coalition for the Rule of Law owns and is in charge of the earth. The Coalition for the Rule of Law is going to care for the earth and all of its people, and start out by accessing our monetary gold reserves in the global debt facility to exchange for the worthless paper currencies issued by the banking cartel. Your job is to begin to issue local currencies in villages and towns. Let's talk about the media and the alternative media. And actually, I'm told now that we're running out of time, so you'll just have to read about the media in the teleprompter. Thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. All of humanity is united in a coalition for the rule of law. The banking cartel is trying to create fake reality to fool the unwary, and media is simply lying. Some of us are victims of mind control. Stay tuned as we take back our world and end the corruption. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Udis.